So then I get this call. I'm like, they saw Man of Steel, right? And my manager's like, yeah, they saw Man of Steel, but it's different. I'm like, what is it? It's a multiverse. I'm like, I don't know what that means. Wow, this has just been such a pleasure. I'm such a lucky boy. I can't wait to go home.
Nerdrotic.com.
It seemed for a year prior to The Flash's release, we were told constantly that this was going to be a game changer, one of the greatest superhero films ever made. So, after all of the positive test screenings and all the positive reviews from CinemaCon and the additional positive reviews from all of the additional early screenings, and James Gunn saying, and I quote, "Can I say one more thing? The Flash is f***ing amazing, like it's one of the best superhero movies I've ever seen." Well, it turns out when the rest of humanity saw The Flash, they didn't feel the same way. It flopped hard, including a catastrophic 81% Friday to Friday drop, culminating in the third worst second weekend drop for a superhero film of all time, only coming behind Steel and Morbius. Can we chalk Flash's massive failure up to being just another bad movie or just another bad DC film? Or is it a symptom of a bigger problem? Please join me, you over 775,000 wonderful members of the Fellowship and the 40% who haven't subscribed yet. Let's talk about the dreaded superhero fatigue. Now, prior to this weekend, I was firmly in the no, it's just bad movie fatigue camp. But now my mind is changing. It's never a good sign when the legendary comic book writer Chuck Dixon, who has a vested interest in superhero films succeeding, comes out and says, hey, we've had a good run. Makes you start to think. Now I'm open to the possibility of people just being over men and women in tights. Or to be more accurate, especially when it comes to Marvel, clunky looking body armor that makes everyone look the same that's just CG'd over a mocap suit. And now The Flash is set to lose hundreds of millions of dollars for a studio that was $50 billion in debt just a year ago. Yes, The Flash was an awful film, and if you want to hear why, outside of the obvious two Ezra Millers, you can check out my review right here. But as far as that bigger picture is concerned, there is another company that DC and Warner Brothers have completely failed to keep up with. Disney Marvel, but it looks like they might be catching up with DC and Warner Brothers on the way down. Now, to be fair, there are currently two superhero films that are successes that are out right now, and I liked one of them more than the other. Guardians of the Galaxy 3 and Miles Morales 2. And we'll get to those, but while DC has never gotten off the ground really, Marvel is driving something that was successful in the ground. Leading to this conversation coming up admittedly again. Is superhero fatigue real? I would argue yes. Now, in DC's case, which is very unique to them, it doesn't help that they decided to fire Henry Cavill and reboot their entire universe with 5 lame duck films to go. And in Marvel's case, which is unique to them, complete oversaturation. Black Widow was awful, Shang-Chi was an absolute disaster, Eternals was unwatchable, Thor Love and Blunder was a joke, Black Panther Wakanda Forever was exploitive, and Antifa Man Kami Mania might be the worst of them all. Pile on top of that, all of the D+ shows, WandaVision, The Falcon and Winter Soldier, Loki, What If, Hawkeye, Moon Knight, Miss Marvel, I Am Groot, She-Hulk, Werewolf by Night, and things don't get any better with Secret Invasion. That is 17 projects from Disney Marvel that are varying degrees of bad to abysmal in the last 2.5 years. Compare that arguably to the good things that they've done in that same time period. The Guardians of the Galaxy Christmas special, which leads directly into Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which is directed by James Gunn, who fucked off to work for the competition DC. And Spider-Man No Way Home, which belongs to Sony. And as far as the DC films that have been released since 2020, including Birds of Prey, The Fabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn, Wonder Woman 1984, Zack Snyder's The Justice League, which is just a director's cut that went on a streaming service, The Suicide Squad, Black Adam, Shazam! Fury of the Gods, and The Flash. And the only good films out of all of that were released in theaters were The Batman, which was met with a collective, it's alright, and The Suicide Squad, which I like quite a bit, but it also had the lowest box office total due to its day-and-date release on HBO Max. Now, if it hadn't been released on HBO Max, I don't think it would have made that much of a difference. I doubt it would have changed that box office total that much. There are patterns and commonalities between both Disney, Marvel, and DC that I believe have led to not only superhero fatigue, but killing the superhero film as the driving force behind Hollywood's box office. They include, not necessarily in this order, incompetence, corporatism, bloated budgets, contrived stories written on the level of your average 12-year-old's fan fiction. Both companies are constantly changing a plan they never had, lying to your audience, forced agenda, adult pretenders blathering on about their politics, fan-baiting marketing, race swaps, gender swaps, zero to give about what made these characters and stories popular in the first place. The source material. Certainly, superhero fatigue is a subject that's been brought up many times in the past, but things feel different this time. And now, the Access Media arrives with a take that's about 3 or 4 years too late. This comes to us from Variety, who is owned by the Penske Media Corporation, who also happens to own Deadline and The Hollywood Reporter. Coming at us with this hot take: superhero fatigue is real. The cure? Make better movies than The Flash. You can feel it in the box office and the collective response to the same old tropes. Interesting that the Access Media comes out so hard against DC, as they should. The Flash sucked, but they remain pretty soft when it comes to Disney Marvel. That take sounds pretty familiar. I seem to remember yours truly and many others saying something like that 5 years ago. Let's go back to the beginning of the end of the superhero film, Captain Marvel. A film Owen Gleiberman, the author of this article, liked. Bowden and Fleck, the directors of Captain Marvel, have brought off something exciting, embracing the Marvel House style, and within that, crafting a tale with enough tricks and moods and sleight-of-hand layers to keep us honestly absorbed. Captain Marvel was patient zero. It had it all: intersectional feminism, a main character on the hero's journey. What's the hero's journey, you ask? Well, our character is great to begin with. It takes the entire film for everybody else to figure that out once she isn't oppressed by the patriarchy. They completely vandalized Nick Fury by having him lose his eye to a kitty cat, a decision the directors thought would be a cute joke. And the worst one of them all, they gender swapped the classic Marvel character Mar-Vell and turned him into Annette Bening, which all came together to become the template of the trademark Disney Marvel MCU. Captain Marvel was once the most protected film of all time, and were all of us Nerdstradamus by knowing it was going to completely suck? No, some of us read the comic books where they did the exact same thing with the all-new, all-different Marvel. They changed characters fundamentally, they gender and race swapped pretty much everybody, and it ended in disaster, leading to the death of the American comic book industry. And now it's happening with the movies. Big surprise! But it looks like even some of our friends in the Access Media eventually, begrudgingly, come around. Yet for the first time, I would say, since the launch of the MCU, which was 15 years ago last month, superhero fatigue is palpable. Yes, it is. You can read it in the numbers, notably the post-pandemic figures, when we don't have to put an asterisk next to the film's box office performance. Interesting how the Access Media conveniently forgets when they weren't putting an asterisk next to those box office numbers during the pandemic, and we were being told things like Shang-Chi: The Absolute Triumph was a hit when we all knew what it really was: a flop. Antifa Man Commie Mania opening huge to $106 million domestically, and it wasn't really that huge, only to collapse and underperform to the tune of $214 million domestically. The tanking of Shazam! Fury of the Gods, $57 million. Or this weekend's strikingly ho-hum numbers for The Flash. Strikingly ho-hum, they were catastrophic. The studio publicity, in floating a prediction of $70 million, was already scaling back expectations. You can feel it in Chris Hemsworth's blithe willingness to trash last summer's Thor sequel, not something movie stars are in the habit of doing. I, for one, would like to see a lot more of this. By the way, Extraction 2 was pretty good, especially when the film in question, Thor: Love and Blunder, was a hit. That's a very strong usage of the term hit. I would say it eked out a profit at best. You can feel it in the reviews, the jadedness of critics when it comes to sitting through another warmed over version of these tropes. Well, which critics are you speaking of? It couldn't be your comrades in the Access Media. That CGI, all that interconnected multiverse busyness with less at stake each time. And in a funny way, you feel it in a lack of pushback against the critics, which probably has something to do with no one believing them anymore. Superhero movies have long been an arena in which popular tastes don't necessarily sync up with the priorities of the reviewers. You mean priorities like keeping their corporate masters happy so they can continue getting their little goodie bags in early access? After being saturated in this stuff for so long, why wouldn't we all have superhero fatigue? I wouldn't argue with that. Every genre gets old, except superheroes aren't necessarily a genre. They are a medium that can have multiple genres within it, except Hollywood has homogenized it all into crap. Then Owen brings up the musicals, and I'm surprised he didn't bring up westerns. Then he comes at us with, again, another hot take. It often seems like comic book movies will be big forever. The truth is, they'll be big until they aren't. Are we now at the tipping point of that moment? Way past it. Now is a good time to bring up the fact that there are two superhero films doing pretty damn well at the box office right now. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which is a sequel to a 2017 movie, and Miles Morales 2, which is a sequel to a 2018 movie. And I happen to kind of like both. Miles Morales 2 was visually brilliant, but it had a plot that couldn't get out of its own way, and it's half a movie. I liked Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 a little more, although both films were too long. One is an outlier and the other one is a holdover. And I think it would be fair to point out that Across the Spider-Verse is once again #1 at the box office, and that might sound brilliant, except when you look at it like this. This comes from Steve Deace of The Steve Deace Show. He's also the executive producer of Nefarious. To be sitting here at the end of June, peak summer blockbuster season, and the #1 movie in America made less than $20 million at the box office is a repudiation of the entire industry at this point. And as far as Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 being a holdover, well, Owen agrees with me. There's no question that it's a success. I would argue that the affection for the Guardian series is so intense that the concluding chapter will go down as one of the last of the old school comic book triumphs. In other words, the best of the worst and the last good Disney Marvel film. Of course, it doesn't help that director James Gunn essentially ended the series and went off to work for the competition, and Miles Morales 2 belongs to Sony. The future is sure to bring too many comic book movies to count. Well, that might take a while, and we'll get to that subject. Disney's many-tentacled master plan will see to that. And James Gunn, of course, is just revving up his vision for the new age of DC, which I believe is DOA. Yet, if a number of films continue to underperform in a notable way, and we've got quite a lineup coming up, the logic of the marketplace will rule. That The Flash was hyped at CinemaCon as some sort of genre masterpiece, only to be met with a collective shrug from critics and audiences, indicates that even those in the business, numbly mistaking product for art, have entered their fatigue phase. And you know what's not going to help any of that? The remaining superhero films that are going to come out this year, which could all potentially be flops, including Blue Beetle, Kraven the Hunter, The Marvels, and Aquaman 2 with Amber Turd. Then there's the WGA strike, which has ground Hollywood to a halt and shows no sign of ending. Now, we don't know what the actors are going to do on the strike front, but it doesn't really matter at this point. Disney Marvel has delayed almost their entire schedule out to 2027. Deadpool 3 has been moved from November 8, 2024 to May 3, 2024, pushing back Captain America Brave New World from that date to July 26, 2024. Thunderbolts has been moved to December 20th, 2024, although that film has ceased production. Blade will now be on February 14, 2025, and Fantastic Four has been delayed to May 2, 2025. The next two Avengers installments received the largest delay, with the Kang Dynasty moving from May 2nd, 2025 to May 1st, 2026, and the Secret Wars shifting from May 1st, 2026 to May 7th, 2027. I hope you're keeping track of all that. This means the only superhero films we'll be getting from Sony, Warner Brothers, or Disney is Madam Web, Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse, Deadpool 3, which is unfortunate because it's a Disney rated R movie, which probably won't be good in the first place, and it has the added problem of Ryan Reynolds not being able to improv his lines due to the strike, which is unfortunate because all the best lines in Deadpool were improvised. This is followed by Captain America Brave New World, which we are told will be a very different Marvel film. Not different like the Eternals. This is a different. And I would agree, it is different to have a Captain America movie without Captain America. And the only DC film will be Joker 2 with Lady Gaga. There may be more, there may be less. Right now, we don't know. What I do know is James Gunn has an uphill battle. And again, I think he's screwed. Instead of focusing on, I don't know, maybe just one good Superman movie, they've got some crazy 8-year plan, and that is after years of brand damage, a DCEU that never took off, the fight with Zack Snyder, the Justice League, canceling Batgirl, firing Henry Cavill, rebooting your universe with 4 very expensive lame duck films to go. Oh, and let's not forget the CW. You know, the network that never turned a profit and was sold for a bag of potato chips. It was filled with DC shows. Mix that in with some MCU failures and gems like Morbius and Hellboy, and the acceleration of the failure is complete. Superhero fatigue is real because Hollywood lost interest and stopped trying. And instead of the studios pausing for self-reflection, I even laugh even bringing it up, we're going to get more navel-gazing, and of course they're going to churn out more garbage because it's easier to blame the audience for their failures. If you like what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like what you heard, I thank you for listening this long. I will see you in the next video.
Nerdrotic.com.